until see. So, okay. And just push okay. I don't know if you even have to push anything, but
I did.
all right. So it is, I'm going to wait until YouTube pops up so I can see the comments. Takes a little bit of time. Taking longer today.
Hoping nobody disrupts. I wouldn't think they would, right?
Probably not if you are in a room.
I reserved
The
it.
library.
So
Come on. This is taking a lot longer than normal. Let's see. There we go. All right. I'm going to pause it. Okay. So it is ready to go now. All righty. Okay. So welcome everybody today. I kind of give a little bit of time people to join. They'll start popping on here eventually. I usually do a big announcement, but just because today is Monday, you know how Mondays are, and it's just been so
yes.
crazy
Yes.
that I didn't get a chance to. So, all right, I am super excited to have Mrs. Cassie Diehl on. Now, Cassie, I don't know if you know, the first time I saw you was you were maybe a junior. It was okay. You sang some song about a bird or something. Do you remember
Really?
what that is? At Fine Arts, we were at Fine Arts
Okay.
Pilots, and I think you ended up winning that year. But you sang,
Okay.
it was a beautiful song. And I just remember then thinking, this girl is just like, joy is just shining from her. Like, I don't know, it was some song about a bird flying away, or
I'm trying to connect the dots
you're
and it's
trying to
just not
think of
coming.
what
But
you
I do
sang.
remember,
Do you
I
remember
do remember
singing in front of
convention.
everyone? Yes. Do you remember
Yes.
singing? They asked you to sing. You sang in
Yes.
front of everyone.
The
So
dreaded like an hour
text or
before. And
yes.
they're like, hey, so you're going to be the special tonight and you're only
Yes.
16 and you're shaking
Yes.
because you don't want to get up in front of all of your peers.
Yep. You did great.
So,
Yes. So
it's
anyone
great.
listening, yes, Cassie has a beautiful voice, and it's so funny interviewing someone with my same name. We
Yes,
have
this is
both two
interesting.
Cassandras on the screen now. So, and we spell our names the same as well. But she has a beautiful voice and she has a CD. So what I'm going to do at the end, so if you stay till the very end, you have a chance to win this. I'm going to be giving away two of her CDs. I'm actually going to buy them tonight from the church that she goes to. So I'm going to buy them tonight and then I'll send them out this week. So she has two CDs. So I'm excited about that. But go ahead, introduce us. I've known you for quite a few years, watched you, grow up because you were a teenager. I was a youth. I was married to my husband and we were youth leaders back then, taking our teen group. So I've kind of watched you grow up, get married, start having kids, serve the Lord. So go ahead and give us, just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your family.
All right. So I got married to Michael Diehl back in 2000. What was it? 2011.
Okay.
Yeah, 2011 we got married. And yeah, it was just a whirlwind because I graduated from college in 2012. So we got married the summer before my senior year. And then really I started, well, we were very busy still with college, and we thought, oh, it'll be a while before we start our family. Well, it was less than 2 years, and we had our firstborn, Dawson. And so he's 11 now. And then we had Miles, who's 9. And we have Noah, who's 7. Gracie was our girl that we finally got, which was a shock. We just thought once you have 3 boys, you just figure
Yeah.
you're a boy mom. So that was exciting. And then now we're also expecting number 5, and double shock, it's another girl. So we kind of, once you have the 3 boys and then you get your girl, you're like, okay, she is the bright and shining star. There's going to be no other girls because we make boys, but this was a miracle. And so when I found out that this one was a girl, I was so excited for Gracie that she gets to experience sister. So we will have 5 children in January, due January. And then we serve the Lord at Northwest Bible Baptist Church. We're just church members, but busy, which is
You're
good.
not just church members
This
as a
is true.
pastor wife.
We
Don't say
shouldn't
that.
put
You're not
that.
just church members.
Yes. No, so no title, but yes, church members. We're very busy, very involved. My husband is the 1st through 3rd grade boys Sunday school teacher. I think he's been doing that for close to 10 years now, not quite 10, but we're going on 10, which is hard to believe. And then we work in a teen ministry on Friday nights. It's there's the RU addiction ministry for those that have addiction and they need to get help for that, but they have a program for teenagers. So RU is addiction recovery, whereas Full Throttle is the name of our teen program, and it is addiction prevention. So
Hmm.
it kind of gives the teens an outlet, public school teens, maybe that don't get to have a wholesome environment during the week. With a Christian education, they're welcome to come on a Friday night, or we have a lot of kids that ride our buses for our church ministry on Sundays. They'll come in on Friday nights. So that's been a really neat ministry to be involved in. And this is our 11th year doing that. So
Oh, wow. That is
yeah,
really cool. I've never heard of that. Yeah,
yeah,
you
it's cool.
have, being from a bigger church, you have a lot of opportunities to serve, which is
Yes,
kind of cool.
yes,
When you're in a smaller church with not as many ministries or outreaches, you don't have that chance so much, but that's really neat. Have you seen a lot of good fruit from that? Like, have you had teens saved and
yes.
do right choices after that, or?
Yes, yes. And
Mhm.
I will say it's not as much as you want, right? You always
Yeah,
are really like, oh, so many of them. And after 11 years, you'd be like, wouldn't we see more? But it's just
yeah,
like any ministry, there's always
yeah.
those few. And it is neat to see that some of the kids that we had back in the very beginning, they may not be super Christians, right? But they're
Mhm.
still coming to church. Like, and
Yeah.
they might be a little more spotty, but they're adults now. They're not teenagers, and I'll still see them, in church service on a Sunday night, or even they'll come for a Wednesday night.
Mhm.
And we're like, okay, this is good. And most of the ones that are still coming on a somewhat consistent basis are the ones that we've had in this Friday night program. So that is good. And then yes, we have seen salvations through it as well. Kids that wouldn't come to our church, but a friend invited them for the Friday night program. They came and got saved. And then even recently, actually just this past Friday, I picked up some girls. They've been coming to our church for years since they were really, really little. They're 12 now, and they're twins. And they just had never made the decision to trust Christ. They've just
Mhm.
never gotten their salvation settled. And
Right.
it was the Friday night that they heard the preaching sermon on it, and they raised their hand. And so I got to lead one of them. The other one wasn't ready, but one of
Right.
them got saved on Friday, and they've been coming on
Oh,
the bus for years. So it is a neat opportunity.
that's awesome. No, you're involved in lots and lots of ministries, a busy, busy woman. So obviously, I wanted to have you on because this channel is geared towards um, first generation Christians primarily. I do have a lot of second generation that watch, but first generation Christians that maybe were from not so ideal backgrounds. And a lot of topics I don't feel qualified. I don't like ever talking about something unless I've been through it personally, or I have experience, or I have wisdom to share. I don't want to talk about something I have no experience in. And so anytime I hear a testimony like yours, because I just heard you at the PR 31 rally a couple weeks ago, I feel like God tells me you need to ask her to come on because I think she can help some women. And so, like I said, the majority is first generation Christian, but kind of what I'm naming today's topic is how to face rejection in your life and then how to break the cycle with your own kids. So, because I know that there are a lot of, it's very hard to break that cycle, when all that you know is rejection and all that you faced is um, no love, a lack of love from your parents. So, how, when you have your own children, do you stop that cycle and then start a new cycle, with your own children? So, that is mainly why I wanted to have you on. Now, go ahead. You can make it as short or as long as you want, but kind of let the ladies know your testimony, kind of how you gave it at the PR 31, starting from when you were born and the situation around that.
Okay, so I won't try to make it too terribly long, but I was born in 1991 to a 16-year-old teenage girl. My mom, I just can't imagine being 16
Mm,
and having a baby. And she had just turned 16. I mean, she was barely 16 when she had me. So being pregnant at 15, I mean, it's just crazy.
mhm.
So, but just by the miracle of just how God worked it out, my mom obviously chose a very rebellious lifestyle. And, it's funny, I didn't mention this at the rally, but my grandparents got saved later in life. So my
Mhm.
mom started going to church maybe when she was 8 or 9, and didn't hear about the gospel and the love of God until she was already a little bit older. You're still a kid, but you're pretty much, your character is kind of
Yes.
set when you're 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And she really struggled just adjusting. She had to leave her school because they wanted to put her in the Christian school. Everything was just so set in. And
Right.
she had a hard time. And so what ended up happening is when she turned about 12 or 13, she started rebelling. She never really got her salvation settled when she
Mm-hmm.
was young. And even in the Christian circles, you can choose the wrong crowd to hang out
Yeah.
with.
Oh,
Not
absolutely.
everybody's always, and so that's what she did. And so that's where that downward spiral of rebellion and bad choices started. And then I was the result of some of that rebellion,
Right.
right? And but it's just so amazing how after I was born, she knew as a 16-year-old, I need my baby to be in church. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
a child now. She's still a child, but she's realizing she has a child and she wanted her baby in church. And so she started taking me, and I don't even know how she got there. I don't know if my grandpa dropped her off or if somebody drove her. I just know she went by herself for several weeks and sat in the back row with me. She wouldn't put me in nursery because
Mm-hmm.
she was, this is my baby. And
Yeah.
she started bringing me on her own. And so then my grandparents, they had actually at that time gotten bitter about something at their church and had dropped out of church. And so they weren't going anywhere. So once my mom started attending this Baptist church, they're like, well, we should really support her. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's doing the right thing. And so they started going just to support her, but they ended up loving the pastor and they were already saved and they fell in love with the ministry. And then they ended up being members there. My mom eventually dropped out, but then my grandparents started just faithfully bringing me. So I grew up in that church for my entire life. And the dynamics of my life, though, growing up, were so different. Maybe a little bit of like a divorced family situation, only it wasn't between the mom and the dad, because my father was not in my life. And I
Mm-hmm.
can address that in a minute. But he was never around. He wasn't a part of the picture. And so it was like, but from ages newborn to 10, it was like back and forth between grandparents and mom, and my mom wasn't sure if she wanted to have full custody of me. She wanted my grandparents to help, but that's my baby. And so it was just back and forth, back and forth. She never did give my grandparents actually tried to gain full custody of me as to be like my legal parents, but my mom never wanted that. She always wanted to be my legal mom and still be able to have that power to take me if she wanted to, right? Which
Right.
she did and she didn't. So the times that I was with her though, I think she knew like that she couldn't sustain to really take care of me on her own 100% of the time because of how she was living. And unfortunately, because of how she lived, and as I said at the rally, I didn't want to, you don't need to go into details because there's so many
No.
stories you could tell, right?
Yeah.
And it's to anybody who's been through deep hurt and who's been through a lot of trauma as a child, you don't like even talking about it because it just opens up a wound. But you can imagine, all that came with her lifestyle, like I said, was drugs, multiple boyfriends in and out, a lot of alcohol, a lot of domestic abuse. With drugs and alcohol always comes domestic abuse. It just
Yeah.
does. It's in the mix. And
Right.
as a kid, you're watching this and you're in the middle of it. You're there when the police come knocking on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning and you wake up and, your mom is being arrested and you're like, what, and
Yeah.
you're only 5 and you're trying to,
Right.
and then you're stuck with the boyfriend, it's just
Oh, yeah.
that you don't even like.
Yeah.
So, but by the
Mhm.
grace of God, I mean, it's really, really by the grace of God. There's multiple times I can look back as a child where God just protected me. I can say I've never had to go through the horrific trauma of sexual abuse. I never had to deal with that. There was
Mhm.
other type of abuse that was a part of my life, but I'm just so grateful. It could have been so much worse. And I
Mhm.
think that's part of, as I've gotten older and going through the process of healing, you realize there is so many people that have had so much worse of a circumstance. And so I am very grateful when I look back at the different times I know God protected me.
Mhm.
Um, and then for my grandparents, I mean, it was still really hard because along with when you're dealing with drug dealers and drugs in general and that type of lifestyle and their daughter is in this and all the different boyfriends that are in and out of jail. And I mean, it's just crazy. So they're getting phone calls all the time and they're having to deal with her all the time. And, she's calling them crying because she's still so young. Right. And it's so hard as a parent. I've obviously never been here in this situation, but I would imagine like no matter, it would be so hard as a parent to disconnect yourself from your child, even in the midst of horrible choices. So my grandpa, especially as her father, had a really hard time. He had a hard time just turning a blind eye. So he'd always try to help, thinking and hoping that if you help this one more time, that they'll change, And so, but that put a lot of stress on my grandparents. And so even though I got to live with them off and on, back and forth. And then from age 10 on, I solely, for the most part, lived with my grandparents because that's when my mom really started to realize, like, I'm making really dumb choices. I'm not getting any better with my life situation. She just needs, and I'm grateful too, that she decided that. And that she had the courage to kind of give me up. And she would come visit for holidays and things like that. And I would still go have occasional visits with her, but just to backtrack. So my grandparents' house could be very, you could feel the tension a lot just because and as a kid, that they want you because they decided to take you and they didn't have to, but you also hear your name so often in arguments and in the stress. And so you think that you're the problem. So I grew up thinking, well, if I wouldn't have been born, there wouldn't be this turmoil. There wouldn't be this, stress. There wouldn't be all this problems. And because as a kid, you can't connect all that. It really probably wasn't until I was newly married as a, growing adult that I really started putting the pieces together on, okay, this wasn't your fault. And so that was difficult. And then going ahead and mentioning my father, I had talked to the girls at the rally about how, going through all this with your mom and then the stress at home with the grandparents and just all the dynamic of what our family was going through. And then all of a sudden, I can't remember how it all happened, but my father started contacting my mom out of the blue when I was 13. And he said he was coming back to Iowa. He had moved. I'm from Iowa. I grew up in Marion, Iowa. And he and my mom were both from Iowa, but he moved to Kansas for a long time. And all of a sudden he was coming back to Iowa and he contacted my mom. And so we set up this, hey, do you want to meet your dad? And well, of course, I'm 13. I've never met my dad. I'm a 13-year-old girl who's never had a dad in her life. Although my grandpa was there for me, it was still never that. It was different. My grandpa would say this to this day. We had more of a buddy relationship, right? He was my buddy. He was my pal. He tried to make things fun for me and do a lot of things with me to, kind of make up for them, but we didn't, he had not grown up in a, what do you want to say when you're very affectionate? He had not grown up in an affectionate home. He did not know he did not feel comfortable even verbalizing, I love you, so I grew up never hearing from a man ever, I love you. Although I knew my grandpa loved me. There's a difference. There was no hugs. There was no affirmation. Right. So I wanted to meet my dad. It was going to be amazing. And I remember walking in and where we were going to meet, and immediately I was kind of disappointed because I was imagining when you've never met your father, you imagine him as this tall, dark, handsome, and he was not what I was hoping, but I was like, it's okay. He's still my father, and we talked and my grandparents were there and supervising it and everything. But long story short, his motive for meeting me was to try to gain a relationship back with my mom. And my mom was too afraid to meet up with him. So he thought that if he met with me, that would warm my mom up to the idea. And then as soon as he found out that my mom was not going to warm up, he just left and just he had zero interest.
Yeah.
and everything he's told me. I mean, he told me so many things. I'm going to take you. I loved basketball at the time. I'm going to take you and we'll practice basketball together and we'll go get ice cream and I want to know all about you. And then literally less than a week, I never heard a thing from him. And then long story short, he left a note on our front door, pretty much a very nasty note,
Oh,
and saying he's, a whole bunch of things, and he left town. And I was devastated. Like, I was just
right.
devastated. And then at this time too, I was 13. I stopped kind of living as much with my mom at 10. So my mom was more disconnected. I didn't really have that great of relationship with her anymore, which, looking at it, I never had that great of one. But as a kid, she's once your mom, always your mom. And
Yeah.
I always looked forward to my times with my mom. They were
Right.
special to me. So when I didn't have that anymore, and now all of a sudden my father, it was just so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
struggled. I mean, I struggled so badly. And I was in church and I was part of the youth group, and I had grown up in church because my grandparents took me faithfully. And my pastor loved me so much, and he and my pastor's wife and my youth pastor and my youth pastor's wife played such an influential role
Mm.
in my salvation and coming to know Jesus as my savior, and just helping me through. I know my youth pastor's wife, she came from a divorced home situation, so a little different, but she still had gone through hurt, and she was able to try to talk me through some things. But I just didn't know how to handle it. And it seemed so easy when people would, at church, you would hear the sermons, you just need to give it to Jesus. And I
Right.
really wanted to. And I felt, and I would pray that all the time. Lord, I want to but it was just so hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe part of it immaturity because of how young I was. But I started, like I had mentioned at the rally, I started turning to things like music, and music had already started, the wrong kind of music, because as I cannot state enough, music is so powerful. I mean,
Yes.
it's insanely powerful. People just, and even taking the Bible, obviously we base all of our beliefs as a Christian off of the word of God.
Right.
But even if you just take the Bible out of the picture,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, scientifically, you cannot
Yeah.
deny the power of the right kind of music and the wrong kind of music. And and
Oh,
you just
yeah.
know, your body tells you what's
Yeah.
right and what's wrong. And anyways, not to rabbit trail on that, but I had been introduced to all sorts of music when I would be with my mom, because anything went,
Yeah.
there was no rules. And so I had already developed a taste for things. And then when I started going through bitterness, really, I was so bitter
Yeah.
and so hurt. I would just feed that with the wrong kind of music because I would think it could
Right.
empathize with me, or, and then I would even take to writing poetry that was just kind of dark and just kind of self-pity, and um but nobody necessarily knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody.
I think we lost her. She is at the library, so I'll just wait until she rejoins again. She is at the library, so her Wi-Fi might be a little patchy. She actually does not have Wi-Fi at home. So I'll kind of wait and see if she picks up on the fact that we lost her. I don't think it's my internet. Go ahead and leave a comment so I can make sure it's not my internet that made me lose her. Nope. It was There she goes. Okay. I think she should be able to join again through the link. I'm going to fix some hairs here. Let me send her another invite just in case. Because I really want to get her back on here because what she's saying is really good and really helpful. There we go. Yeah, it's frozen up. I know. We'll just kind of wait. I might actually have to edit this one, guys, and like cut out the dead spots. I very rarely download and edit, but I might just do that again. Here, let me text her. Okay. Oh, her laptop just stopped. Okay. We'll try her phone. That's interesting. Just use that same link. All right. So along those same lines, we're talking about just breaking cycles and things. And I know for some of us, it could be just being raised in an angry home, right? And we know the effects that anger has on us as we're raised in that home and how hard it is when it comes to our own children, just not transferring that anger. Maybe it's unresolved conflict or it's unresolved trauma. And instead of dealing with that unresolved conflict or unresolved trauma in our own life, we get married and we're working through a bunch of stuff, just being newly married. And then we start having kids and life gets even more stressful. And, things just start happening and we have this unresolved trauma, unresolved conflict in our life. And that can transfer through to, what our children, what we either take out on our children or, different things like that. So there are different things that we are definitely prone to. When we've been raised in a certain environment. So oftentimes if we've been raised in an angry environment, we have that anger there that's um, going to be more prevalent and pops up. It's just our first instinct because we were raised in that. It's our first instinct to use that anger or have that temper, take it out on our kids. If we were raised in a home that's not affectionate, like she was talking about, we have the propensity to not be affectionate with our children. If we were raised in a home that's overly affectionate, that's usually how we're going to be. So a lot of us are products of our upbringing. But if you have been through painful things, there she is, then let's get her joined. If you've been through painful things, then you obviously don't want to have your children go through those same things. So, all right, let's see if we can get this going. Hopefully it won't overheat. Sometimes mine overheats, so I can't hear you. Oh, here we go. Ask to unmute. There we
Okay.
go. Yay, we're back.
Sorry, I have no idea what happened. It just died.
It's fine. This will work. Hopefully your phone won't overheat. So we'll just
Okay.
do it. And if it starts overheating, but I want to get to the majority of it. So yes, you're talking about just the music feeding this, and no one
Yeah.
really knew it was going on, right? Like no one knew this
No,
was going on. And
no.
when do you think that it kind of culminated for you? When were you probably at your lowest while working through all of this?
I would say probably when I was about 14.
Okay.
Um, that was a really tough time, even 15. And it's so funny because I actually made a little CD with some friends when I was 15, a good
Oh,
Christian CD, and I almost over, I'm trying to find the right wording for it, overcompensated with how I was feeling by being super bubbly and super crazy and super, we're up to see with my friends and this is so much fun and
yeah,
and it was a great time, but not really necessarily meaning anything deep to me. Obviously now music has such a deeper meaning to me, and
right.
I really, really feel it. But more back then, it was just something fun to do, and I wanted to do what was right, Cassie.
Hmm.
I really, really did. I just had that desire. I wanted to do
Yeah.
what's right, but I felt like I was fighting two different sides of myself. I
Hmm.
had this desire to want to serve the Lord and do the right thing, and just be a healthy human being mentally. And in my Christian walk, I was trying to read my Bible and pray. Um, but I just had this hidden in my heart, these hidden issues with bitterness and just so much pain that
Hmm.
nobody. I didn't feel like I could trust anybody with it. I think that's a big thing about when you do go through so much hurt and you're betrayed by those who are supposed to protect you.
Hmm.
You just really struggle with trusting.
Yeah.
and confiding in anyone. And
Mm.
even with my grandparents, I knew I could trust them. But then again, everything was always we were always so upset in our household. And I felt like I was always the problem, the root of the problem. I felt like if I shared any of those issues with them, it would just cause more upset, more disruption. So, and then when you kind of build yourself up with a reputation in the youth group, because I served in the ministry,
Mhm.
and I really did desire to do what's right. I had a really zealous personality, which I've still kept. I still have a
Yes.
lot of zealousness, but you think, well, what would they think about me?
Mhm.
What would my youth pastor say if he knew? What
Mhm.
would my friends think of me if they knew? And so you just kind of hide it away, which is the worst thing that you can do. You have to talk about it. And obviously we talk about it to the Lord, but sometimes you just need help.
Yeah.
So that's something I had to learn.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I didn't really learn that until I was older. But once I had mentioned when I turned 16, that was a turning point in my life spiritually, because I really got my relationship with Jesus Christ settled at age
Mhm.
16. And I realized I just had such a hard time trusting even God.
Right.
That's why I doubted so much that I was
Right.
even truly a Christian or truly had trusted in Christ, because how can I trust in somebody that when I struggle so much to trust,
Mhm.
it just didn't make sense. And I always kept doubting myself. And then when I was 16, I don't know, the Lord just gave me a peace to finally let go
Right.
of I just was holding too tight to doubts and
Mhm.
what if. And I just let them go. And I truly gave my life to Christ and trusted him as my savior. And I never doubted since then. And a relationship with Jesus Christ and knowing him as your savior it just completely changed how I viewed things, even though I was in church.
Right.
So it wasn't so much religion, it was relationship.
Well, and I like how you said, because, obviously, I believe salvation is easy. It is putting all your faith and trust in the work of Jesus Christ and believing on that. And I could see how for you that would be hard because
Yeah.
everyone in your family had let you down. And it was so hard for you to put all your faith and trust in anyone, any man. So I could see how that would transfer over to not fully trusting him as Jesus Christ. So I remember that you said that in the Proverbs, and I told my husband, I said, I was talking about inviting you on, and I said, I could see how that would be really tough for someone who has been just completely let down over and over and over again, having that trust issue there. Yeah, that's really, really tough. Um, so what did it look like going into your relationship um, with Michael as you started navigating the waters of that? Now, I did want to ask too, I didn't ask you this when I saw you before. Do you have a relationship with your mom now?
I do, but I don't.
Okay.
Um, I can say this way, she's in my life as far as we do occasionally talk.
Mm-hmm.
And then I usually see her about once a year.
Okay.
Some either Christmas or Thanksgiving, one of those holidays. It's usually once a year I do get to see her. Um, but it's a struggle because there even moving forward as an adult, there's been disappointment even with that relationship, and thinking, well, maybe now that I'm an adult, maybe now that she is a grandma, you think,
Yeah, you like hold out hope. Like
yeah,
this is going to make the difference, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it has not been what I was hoping it would be. And I remember even making a statement to her a couple of years ago, hey mom, when my grandma and grandpa are getting older, and
Mhm.
you're going to be all that I have. Like,
Yeah.
because there was and I don't want to delve into it, but there was a situation going on a couple years ago where I felt we weren't close, but now I felt like we were really, really distancing. Like it was, becoming almost, where I thought I was going to lose her completely in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want that.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember when I said that to her, how she would be all I have left. I was hoping for this warm response, like, and there was just nothing. And and so to me, that was another form of rejection,
Yeah.
right? When you're like giving your heart to your parent, even as a married, I think I had 4 kids at the time. This was
Mm.
just a couple of years ago. And then not receiving that back when you care so deeply for somebody and then you're wanting that reciprocated and you're not.
Mm.
So, but I've had to learn to forgive and forgive and forgive and forgive and realize that, you know what, as long as she'll receive phone calls from me, as long as she'll receive pictures of my kids from me on occasion,
Mhm.
as long as she wants to still see us once a year, I'm not going to cut that off. I'm
Right.
not, I just don't see the fruit in that. Um, and so at this point, we have a distant relationship, but there's still something there. So, and I'm grateful for it because the kids still get to see Mimi once a year, and she's kind to them when she sees them and loves on them. It's just not what you hope it would be. But I'm really grateful for my grandparents because they were so young as grandparents, so now they're perfect age as great grandparents
Right.
to
Right.
fill that grandma grandpa role, and they're loving it because with
Mm.
me they had to raise me.
Right.
So they didn't really get to be grandma and grandpa. So this has been so fun for them to just come in and spoil and then go back home.
Yes, that's awesome. I feel like even if we have a crummy relationship, even if we have a crummy mom, even if we have a non-existent dad, I feel like within us there's this natural innate desire to be close to our parents.
Yes, it's always
Mm.
there.
Yeah.
It is always there. And I will say that probably 8 years ago, because I think Miles is 9. I think my second son, I had 2 kiddos. And this is when I first got introduced to Facebook, right? And it was
Mhm.
the new thing. It wasn't new, but it was new to me.
Yeah.
And I thought I could contact I can see
Mhm.
where people are at. And I actually have 5 half siblings.
Oh.
And I thought that that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But we got in connection through social media. And
Okay.
but we have no it was pretty much just like, oh, you exist. They didn't really
Right.
know who I was, and we made initial contact, but we didn't develop a relationship or anything through that. But I started thinking, you know what, I'm still struggling, even in marriage, even with having 2 kids, I was still
Mm.
struggling with bitter feelings towards my father, especially. And I thought I love to write. And I thought maybe if I just send him a letter through Facebook Messenger, I was actually able to find him and tell him I don't want a response. I don't need a response. I just really felt for my sake, as part of my healing process, that I needed to write him a letter verbalizing to him that I want to forgive him. I want to move on. And I'm asking the Lord to help me forgive him and just verbalize that to him. I just thought that would help bring some type of healing to me. And which it did in some aspect. I felt like I could physically see it when I pushed send. I could physically see it go. You
Mm.
know,
Mhm.
it gave me some accountability. Like, okay, Cassie, you've told him that you've asked the Lord to help, that you're asking the Lord to help you forgive him. Now it's time to really work on your end. And it did help me.
Good.
But he did respond, and his response wasn't something I was not prepared for. And in the meantime, had been married 2 other times, and the woman that he was married, I guess I shouldn't say, I don't know if he's still currently married to her, but as of 8 years ago. So not my half sibling's mom, but another woman now.
Mm.
Apparently, she knew about his 5 other children, but she didn't know about me.
Hmm.
So when I sent him the email, it kind of disrupted his little life because I guess his wife saw it, and he decided. And I found out later about this from my mom, because apparently he called my mom. It was a whole drama. It was a whole drama scene. When you think you're trying to do something right, and then
Aw.
ensues from it. But pretty much his response to me was, "You're not my child. I'm not your father." He was
Mm.
completely sent me a letter of disownment.
Okay.
And because he didn't want his wife, oh yeah, I have 5 other kids from this woman. Oh, and by the way, I have another kid from this
Right.
other woman, just so,
Yeah.
and come to find out later from my mom, that's exactly what had happened because she somehow got in the midst of it and ended up having a conversation with him. But that was really hard to swallow once again, even as a married wife and mother of two, to get a letter from your father, because as you said, it doesn't matter how crummy your parents are. There's just
Yeah.
something God puts in you to want to have some type of relationship.
There
And
is.
maybe deep down inside, without even realizing it, even though I told him I didn't want a response, I think deep down inside, I would
Mhm.
have enjoyed some type of response. But
Right.
when I got the response of, you're not my child,
Yeah.
even though, I mean, I'm his kid, there's just no doubting it. And
Hmm.
he paid child support my entire, you know what I'm saying? It's just
Right.
so nonsensical and was so hurtful. Um, to be so, and then just realizing the depth of selfishness that goes into that, to be able to not even care how, not even care that this is your biological child, and being able to just tell somebody that because it would disrupt your life.
Right.
That was really, really hard to swallow. But I felt like God really helped me through that, because when you become a wife and a mom and you start building your own family,
Hmm.
your focus is on that. And I my focus was not on myself. So it's not on yourself so much anymore, because you're trying to be a good wife and raise your kids right. And this is my opportunity to be
Hmm.
able to build something that I never had.
Yeah.
And so so I was able to, as an adult, I've been able to handle different difficulties like that so much better, because it's not about me and my feelings. It's about what I'm able to invest in my own family.
Right.
Uh, and God has really helped me with all of that.
When it comes to Michael, when you were married, just going through all the rejection that you had in your life, were there things that you had to work through in regards to realizing he couldn't fill every void in your life? Because I think even those of us who have good relationships with our fathers, even when we first get married, it's like every girl needs to realize, my husband's not the end all to my happiness, right? So, were there anything specifically that come to mind that you kind of had to work through as a new bride, or even now, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% to all of that. It's so interesting because it's still a learning process even now, because you think that you've learned yourself, and, we're 13 years of marriage, which is still, when you look at people who've been married for 50 years, it's
Yeah.
nothing. You think, okay, after 13 years of marriage, I've got this down. And I think that I had to realize, because I was so young and I
Hmm.
had come from such a situation of turmoil, that I really wanted stability. And I thought it would be an escape. Marriage would be an escape, and it would be a band-aid and a fix-all,
Hmm.
and not realizing that, okay, marriage is work. Comes with its own set of problems, because you're two imperfect human beings.
Right.
And we were so young when we got married, and it was just a lot. And I did have to realize, okay, hold on. He cannot be everything that I imagined that my father would have been,
Right.
or you don't have that experience with a father. So you just kind of create this imagination of what it's supposed to be,
Hmm.
and how you want to feel cared for, and how the needs that they're going to fill. And it just wasn't reality. I mean, he was working so much, and there was, you have to adjust to being alone,
Hmm.
and it it was it was a lot to adjust to, even when, once the kids come, and, realizing that affects your relationship. And I will say, Michael's been so long suffering with me, though. He's so good about just kind of realizing where I'm at, where I come from. being patient. He has a lot of patience. He's very kind. But then other times, and that's the majority, but other times it's not, I'm lashing out in anger about something or something that maybe he said, because I will say that in a very tense environment, when you grow up in a tense environment, there's a lot of harsh words that are said.
Right.
Out of anger because everyone's stressed out. So there
Right.
was a lot of criticism and a lot of harshness. So whenever my husband would get upset or something, and he wouldn't say anything nasty, but it would just be like a moment, right? Or even not in an upset tone, but even just like, hey, babe, I don't know if we should do things like that, just maybe
Right.
critiquing. It's like fists up. And
Yeah.
I even to this day, I'll have to really calm myself down and be like, okay, it's not a personal attack against you.
Right.
Just because he thinks that, it doesn't mean he thinks you're a horrible wife or horrible person. That's my automatic mindset is like, oh, he thinks I'm horrible. He doesn't like anything that I do. I'm failing as his wife and I'm not meeting his needs. And that can be a struggle. But then to switch it around, I have to watch myself when I get upset, making sure that I don't lash out at him, or because I have such a high bar in my mind of what I thought a man should be, that perfect Christian man.
Right.
I need to be careful with my words and not. It's funny, the Bible talks about that you shouldn't spend time with, and I'm totally botching the verse, but the gist in Proverbs is not being around an angry man because you'll get a snare to your soul. It'll literally snare you. And when you're raised in an angry, stressed out environment, it can really follow you.
Yeah.
And making sure that you can look at yourself with humility and go, okay, I need to be quiet. I just literally I wrote an article recently for something, and the title of the article was, I'm missing it now. There was two different articles, but it was pretty much just like, shut your mouth.
Yes.
Like, back off, babe. Back off, babe.
Back off,
and I
babe.
talked about that was the title of it, back off, babe. And I talked about literally just having to physically, and I will find myself sometimes literally putting my hand over my mouth because, shame on you, just because it's still in you. It doesn't matter how long when you're raised that way, and when you come from a harsher environment, it can be in you to put your fists up and be defensive, but also be on the offense and be overcritical yourself of things that your spouse does. And I've had to really, really work through that, and God has helped me so much. It's just by the grace of God, and a lot of time with the Lord, a lot of good books. I mean, I just highly recommend getting good books on marriage, and especially if you don't have the experience or if you didn't come from a stable home and don't know what that's like.
Right.
I've read a lot of books from trusted Christian women that I knew could help guide me in that area.
Yep. And I always tell women too, like, you have to get into a good local church with a godly pastor and a godly pastor's wife. And, if you don't have an idea how to raise kids, it's not so much put them on a pedestal and do everything they do, but ask them for counsel. Go to someone like one of my favorite people is Pastor Angel and Mrs. Angel. Go to people that have raised kids that are still in church and serving the Lord and ask them, what did you do with this situation? How do I respond with this? So, no, those are some good thoughts. So, when it comes to raising your kids, what do you think the biggest obstacle for you is as far as like breaking the cycle, or rather starting a new cycle or a new way of raising your kids? What are some ways that you've really had to, and you were a boy mom for a long time, and I know boys have different dynamics than girls, as you're finding out now that you have girls. So, but just what are some things that you've had to remind yourself of as you're raising your kids?
That's a great question too. And this could go so many different directions, but
Yeah.
I would say probably my biggest thing that I have to tell myself all the time is not to have too high of expectations for them. You want to set the bar high, but you also don't want to just have such a high expectation that it's not realistic. Like,
Right.
they're still going to be kids. They're not going to be perfect. And I also have to remind myself that when I feel like, well, why aren't you thankful for this? Or like, they're not grateful enough. I have to realize they have no idea. Because I look back and be like, if you even knew, like what I went through, and what, you would be so grateful for this, but they don't have that perspective. And
Right.
that's not fair for me to put that on them, to expect them to understand how good they have it or how grateful they should be, at age 7,
Right.
because I went through a traumatic experience. And that has been a really, really interesting thing for me to work on. Because sometimes it's happening and I don't even realize it. I'm getting upset. I'm taking things personally. And I think sometimes when they do wrong, as kids do, instead of realizing, okay, they're breaking a biblical principle, I just need to help them through this, and we need to deal with it from that aspect. I take it personally because I put so much pressure on myself as a mom that I want to raise these perfect kids and I want to have this perfect home because I want to do something. I want to have something that I never had, and I want to give them something that I always dreamed of. And then when I feel like things are not going the way they should, I take it personally, like it's an attack against me as their mom, like, why are you doing this to me? And so that's been something that I have to remind myself and ask God to help me with, is that when things are not perfect in our little world, it's not against me. It's not a personal attack on mom. It's not something I should take personally. And then I can't be overcritical too. Just the same with my husband, that can bleed over to the kids too, being overcritical of the kids and finding yourself not encouraging as much as you criticize. And that's a huge one for me. I want to make sure that I'm balancing my encouraging words and my lifting up. And then if I am having to be critical about something, that I'm not tearing them down and hurting their spirit, that I'm being critical in a loving way, to critique them in a loving way, to try to build them. And not having a negative, because if sometimes when you feel like you're taking it personally, the way they're behaving, you can kind of get an attitude. I can find myself getting an attitude towards them, and then that comes out in how I speak to them. And then you wonder, well, why are they speaking to each other like that? Why are you having that attitude with your sibling like that? Well, it sounds just like when mom, got upset with said that to me, which I'm sure every mom has their moments, no matter what background they have. I mean, raising kids is not easy, but I have really struggled, and even now, it's a fault that I have, that I need to keep things realistic. I cannot be unrealistic in my expectations okay, I think it's great that I want to create a good environment for my kids and have this Christian home that I always dreamed of, but also realizing it's not going to be perfect. There is no home out there that is perfect.
Nope.
And like you said, I cannot, like you said, a good local church that has helped keep me balanced and realizing that the humanity of other good Christian families.
Yeah.
And then just hearing constantly from the pulpit that from the scripture, Bible-based, on what the focus is.
Right.
And the focus is on Jesus Christ, and the focus is on helping my children develop a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yes.
So that they can be successful in their futures. And just keeping the main thing, and not getting hung up on the imperfections. Ultimately God's kids anyways, right? And I felt like as soon as I started having babies, I'm like, oh, God gave me these kids, which he does. He gives them to us to watch over and raise for him, but they're ultimately his. But I just feel like maybe I don't have a handle on it, and it's driving me crazy because I want to fix it, because I want it to be just so. I'm learning to just give it to God. And you know what, Lord, they're really ultimately your child. So please help them with this and give me discernment and how, if there's a way I can help them, So that is I mean, we could talk forever on examples. Yes. So,
but that's good, because I like that. And this is one thing I've tried to do too. I've never tried to act like I have all the answers, because I don't, because every kid's different and there's different variables and every kid has different personality. But one of the things that I like is my goal is just to be better tomorrow than I am today, and just keeping that humble mindset. Well, I messed up today in this area. I let someone have it who really didn't deserve it. I'm going to do better tomorrow. Right. And then you lose your temper the next, I'm going to do better tomorrow. So, like, always keeping the mindset that tomorrow I want to be at a better place as a Christian, as a wife, as a mom than I am today, and just being open to growth. Because I feel like the ones who have all the answers, think they have it figured out, they're the ones that don't really ever grow, in their role. So I really, really like that. I love your words. We definitely could. But I'm going to try to wrap this up. I try to keep them right at an hour. So I'm going to try to wrap it up pretty quick. We didn't get through like barely any of the outline, but that's okay. We got through the most important. Those are the things I wanted to focus on the most. Do you have any words to those who have faced rejection in their life, whether that's through a parent, a child, a spouse, a friend? Anyone, we all go through rejection. We all face it sometimes on a weekly basis. Do you have any words of hope to give to them?
Well, my first thing would obviously be making sure that they have a relationship with Jesus Christ, because if you don't know the love of God, that is number one. If you truly know the love of God in your life, that's going to help you the most. And that's where I started seeing small victories in my life. Although I still struggled with hurt and pain moving forward, I felt like I had God's help when I got my relationship with Jesus settled. Before that, it just seems like you're just trying to keep your head above water. You're just treading water. But now that I have that relationship with the Lord, that has been so helpful. And then having that consistent walk with God every day, just every single day, just finding some time to get away and meet with the Lord and talk with him and share with him your burdens. But I will say that true healing, as much as giving it to the Lord, is our main thing, because he knows. God knew from the very beginning what I needed and what I was going to go through. And so he's the one ultimately to discuss it with, because he's the one that shaped my life. Mm-hmm. But I did start to see a lot of deeper healing when I actually was able to open up to trusted counselors about it, such as my pastor, and then other trusted, really good Christian women, older women that I view as mom figures. And just be able to talk it out, because sometimes you don't even realize what you're feeling until you start to verbalize it to somebody else. And then things will come out and it's just almost kind of like a breath of relief that you finally admitted it. And it's not that you have to admit it to them, but it's like you're admitting it to yourself. And then they can pray for you. They can take your burden and because your pastor truly loves you and cares about you, and somebody that you trust, that you look up to, that you have a good relationship with, such as I said, I have a couple mom figures. I knew that they'd be praying for me. And just having that peace and knowing that you have someone praying for you and you're not alone in this. And that not only do you have God to help you, but then you have some good praying Christian people and a pastor that is going to be able to support you, and you don't feel like you have to hide anything. I think it's so easy to want to hide our feelings because we almost feel ashamed of them,
right?
Because we don't think that as a good Christian, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Well, no, we're human. We still have sin. And I think that being able to also find a way to plug in to help others, I think that is, and that's where local church comes into play so much. But being able to work with some of these teenagers on Friday nights and I worked on the bus routes for years, where most women that are watching this would probably know what that is, reaching a lot of kids in the community that are maybe underprivileged, don't come from the best type of household situations, and being able to get a good perspective on, okay, there's people out here that have it worse than me. There's people out here that have similar to what I went through, and maybe I can help them and be an encouragement to them. And then that's getting the focus off of yourself.
Right.
And you're able to focus that energy of maybe self-pity and bitterness. You're able to kind of get that energy and focus that on somebody else. and how you can help somebody else in their life and see God use you. And that's the most humbling experience, is to walk away from a situation and go, wow, God just allowed me to help that person. God, like when you see the light go on, it's amazing. And the fact that God would use any of us, but especially somebody, I feel so unworthy. I have on my wall in my room and in our house, in our family room at home, in big words on the wall, if not for the grace of God. Because I want to be reminded every single day that there's no reason that I should have what I have. And I don't have a perfect life, but I have a really good life, and I'm very grateful for it. And God has given me a lot of opportunities to serve him and to try to heal through good Christian friends, good Christian counselors, but then also being able to serve others. So that would be probably my best bit of advice.
No, that's great. And I feel I like how you say that you've come far because you have worked through a lot of the hurt and you are healing, but yet you're still a work in progress too.
Yes.
Right? Like none of us have arrived as Christians, none of us have arrived as wives, as moms. But I'm glad that, because like even in my own life, I have to be very careful. I have to fight against, I'm like you, we're both Cassies. We're both very spunky. We're both like justice for all, and competitive, and we want to win, and we, type A personalities very much so, but it's not my natural bent to be even forgiving. It's not my first instinct is anger, and like I'm going to avenge this. Like so I've really, through the ministry, especially through the years of ministry, I've had to really reshape who I am as far as my personality goes. It's not my natural inclination to do these things. And I think part of that is just being raised in an angry home. But then, all of us have flesh, even if we're saved, we all have flesh that we battle with. And it's easier just to give into the flesh than live in the spirit. And, but I love what you said about that. So you have tried, I love it also that even though it's not perfect, you have tried to maintain a relationship, even though there were hurts and there were things done in your past. Do you have any words to those who are too quick? Because there's a lot of people now, they're told your mom's a narcissist, you don't need anything to do with her, right? So just forget her. You focus on you. You do you, girl. Or do you have any words to those? Because I'm very quick to end I'm very careful. I'm very careful to end relationships when it comes to burning bridges, because relationships are very important to me. Do you have words to those who are too quick to burn bridges when it comes to relationships in their own lives?
I would just say tread very carefully, because there can be legitimate reasons that you need to disconnect, but sometimes it's just our pride. And sometimes it's, like this situation with my mom. What would it benefit me to completely destroy that relationship? There'd be no fruit from it. I don't think I would feel better from it.
No.
And what if I have an opportunity by keeping that relationship open to be able to have an influence on her in the future that I can't see right now? So we have to view relationships as opportunities too, to make an impact. It's not all about, well, what can I get from this relationship? It's, well, maybe how could you maybe benefit that person? How could maybe you be a blessing to that person? And I would also be, if you're really feeling strongly about, I just don't know if I need this person in my life, really give it to God in prayer for a long time.
Yeah.
Because how many times has God asked us to forgive? Right? I mean, 70 times 7, and Jesus died on the cross for us. I mean, God's perfect son. I've talked to my kids about this so many times. It's just the reality of it. If he could die for us as a perfect part of the Godhead for sinners, but we can't forgive somebody because they wronged us or because we just don't jive with them. And I've had personal experience with this too in some other relationships in my life. And I've been very close to wanting to just forget it. It's just not worth it, especially with all the junk I had to go through as a kid. I don't need more junk in my life. But I'm so thankful that I didn't, because I think it would be very damaging to my family, to my attitude, to my spirit. if I had just cut that off and not learned to be long-suffering, and you don't have to like everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just asking God to help you have a supernatural love for that person. And he will. I can testify that a specific situation I'm thinking about in my mind, I just never thought that I could ever love this person. And I just gave it to God. And I can truly say I do love that person. Now, do I love spending time with this person? Is this the person I want to go shopping with and hang out with? Absolutely not. But I truly care about this person and care about their family. And God has given that to me as a supernatural. So I would just say, be very cautious and make sure that nothing is done. If you're doing it out of a spirit of anger,
Yeah.
that's probably a good sign that God's not in it.
Right. They're very, very wise words. I want to pick your brain some other time too. This is very, very good. So we are going to kind of end it with that, but I'm going to do a giveaway. So for those of you that are in the chat, we do have almost 20 watching right now. So for those of you who are in the chat, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and we kind of have a little bit of a lag. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer for us to see the answer. How old was Cassie's mom when she had her? That'll be our first question. So whoever writes the answer first in the chat will get one of these. And then after you guys, when you're the winner, you'll just need to email me at gentlyledsisters@gmail.com and tell me your address so I can ship that out to you. So ooh is not the right answer. There's some chats. Okay, so how old was Cassie's mom when she had her? First one to do the answer. It had to be someone that was near the beginning. So it has to be one that hung in for the whole interview. We'll see. No answers yet. I know there's people watching. Any guesses? You can start guessing. We only have one. And then the second question, what can be the second question? I know. Okay. Cassie, Cynthia, 15. No, not quite. Almost, but not quite. We have the second question is going to be Cassie is, nope, not 17. Cassie is currently pregnant with child number what? So those are our 2 questions. This kind of shows us who is here near the beginning. Susan, you got it. She's 16. And Susan, oh, you almost got it, Logan. Susan got it, 16. I think Susan's in Canada, but I can still send you one. So Susan, just email me at gentlyledsisters@gmail.com. All right, now lots of answers are coming in. Logan, you got it right after Susan. You are almost there. Okay, so for the second question, Cassie is currently pregnant with child number. Susan got it again. Sorry, you already won. So someone else answer what Susan answered. Logan, you were so close again. She has 4, but she's currently pregnant. Oh, duh. I just gave the answer. Well, Susan already gave it. So Susan already gave it. That was not smart of me. But whoever types it in first wins it then. So Logan said 4, Susan said 5, but Susan already won 1. She doesn't need 2. So there we go. AAH, whoever you are, you just won. So go ahead and email me with your address and your name, and I will send those out. I will pick them up tonight. If I see you tonight, remind me to do that because I might forget. And I hope
baby nursery.
Yes, I have to actually go to baby nursery because I won't have babies with me, but I ordered culottes from Sarah. So she has culottes for my girls in there. So I'll probably see you at least sometime tonight. So thank you so much for coming on. If you guys have any questions for Cassie, go ahead and leave them in the chat. If you feel like you just, want to email her with a personal story and ask for advice, you can message me and I will give you her email and you can personally reach out to her. Like I said, she's had more experience when it comes to this than I have, which is why I wanted her on here talking. And you are such a naturally gifted speaker. You need to be doing this more often. You don't stumble over your words. You say like the most perfect things. I am not a great speaker. I'm a writer. So I feel like if I write everything down, I do decent. But when I'm trying to talk, I See, I stumble over my words and I can't think of what I'm trying to say, but it just flows so well with you. Even when you were speaking in front of 200 girls, I could tell you didn't even act nervous. You said you were nervous, but it didn't come across. It did not come across.
Well, that's highly encouraging because you never view yourself that way. So I'm very glad to get that feedback. That makes me feel better.
Yes, no, you're a naturally born speaker, definitely. So I have a feeling God's going to use you in a lot of women and a lot of girls' lives in the future, because we all need people just being an encouragement. And that's what you've always been to me. We've always had fun together at camps and watching our kids kind of grow up together. And, you've always been an encouragement to me because you do have such a sweet spirit. And that's what I'm drawn to. Those are the type of Christians I'm drawn to, because that's what I try to work on daily in my own life, is having that sweet spirit, because it doesn't come naturally at all. So yes, thank you for coming on. And ladies, thank you for listening. Yeah. And we'll see you tonight probably. So go ahead and hang on. I'm going to